host, Michelle Marchant Johnson, and I'm thrilled that you're here because we have a very special guest. And I will tell you a little bit more about her in just a moment, but her work has transformed the lives of many people throughout the world. And she has spent literally thousands of hours interviewing men, talking to men, and helping people understand men more deeply. And that is the wonderful Alison Armstrong. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm really glad to be here to kick off your event. I am so excited about what you're doing.
I'm so excited to have you here. We're thrilled and honored that you can be with us, and we're so excited to tap into your wisdom. And I want to get moving right away because I know you have so much to share with our audience. So just for those of you that may not be quite as familiar with Alison, I do want to give a short formal introduction. Alison Armstrong is an author, educator, and creator of the widely acclaimed Queen's Code Workshop series, which asks the question, what if no one is misbehaving, including you? She explores the good reasons behind the behavior of men and women, such as fundamental differences in the ways we think, act, and communicate. She offers simple partnership-based solutions to improve our communication and intimacy by honoring ourselves and others. And she's known for her insight, sense of humor, and ability to articulate the human experience and predicament of gender. And I asked Alison to be with us to kick off this event because she is going to give you juicy insights and tips on how you can not only have better relationships with men in your lives, but how you can get the most from this series by learning how to listen to men. She's going to give us tips about listening to men. So Alison, share with us a little bit about why you chose this topic, and let's just jump right in.
Yeah, I would love to do that. As you know, Michelle, I started studying men in 1991. And I wanted to know what was it that was bringing out the worst in them, because I definitely was. And just hoping, that I might learn something that brought out the best in them. And it wasn't until 1995 that we offered our first workshop. It was called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. And as I was interviewing women before the workshop, as I was creating it and finding out what they were frustrated about and confused about, and then I would go to the men I'd been studying and I'd ask the answers to their questions. And at some point it dawned on me that they would have questions that I wouldn't have the answer to. And I thought, I'll just bring the men along.
Yeah.
So that's how our first man panel was born, I just brought them along in case women had a question that I hadn't asked yet. I'd only been studying them for 4 years. And it ended up being the most profound part of the workshop. And it's continued now for 22 years. The panel of men is most women's favorite part. And one of the things that makes it that way is that we spend so much time in our courses teaching women how to listen to men and how to see men for who they really are. And then we bring these real men in, and what they say is a revelation. And what makes it a revelation isn't that it's the first time men have said such things. It's that for the first time women could hear it. And yes, and so it had to do with how they're listening. So what I would love to provide, Michelle, is a couple things. One is a way to listen, like actually what to be thinking about while the men are talking, which is related to how men form their opinions. So you're having over 20 men come on and literally give their opinions, which is something that most women most of the time avoid. And so I'd like to talk about why that is, and then how to listen to those opinions in a way that it's like a treasure hunt and you end up with gold. So And then if we have time, I'd love to throw something in about the way that their answers are all going to come from the stage of development that they're in, on top of everything else. And so you can hear some really interesting perspectives. That's what I want to do, if we can do it all.
That sounds wonderful. Let's go so we can get as much juicy stuff in here as possible.
Okay. All right. So the first thing that I want to say is that in general, an opinion to a man is not the same thing as an opinion to a woman. So for most women, most of the time, if you ask her what she thinks about something, she'll just tell you what she thinks about it right off the top of her head. Well, I think this. If you ask her how she feels about something, then she's going to go deep. Then she's, how I feel about that. That's a committed answer for most women. How I feel about it is a committed answer. What I think about it, just what I think about it now. I could think something different tomorrow. Does that fit for you?
Yeah, so this is where the adage about women changing their mind frequently comes from, right?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, yes. It's one of the reasons. Another is a whole other topic. So the first thing for you to know is, if you just want to make an easy association, an opinion is to a man what a feeling is to a woman. So another way of saying that is he has invested himself in that opinion. It's not lightly held. So men do this thing they call form. They form an opinion. And you can ask them what they think about something, and they could say, I don't know enough to have formed an opinion. Which to us is surprising because we have opinions about things we don't know anything about. So we think, well, you must be stupid because you don't have to know anything to have an opinion. To them they do. And so there's actually two parts, okay? One part of an opinion is what they would call facts, okay? And that's a whole other problem. What makes something a fact? A fact comes from a trusted source. And just to give you a hint, women do things all the time that make them not a trusted source of information to the people that love them. The men that love them don't believe them because they're not a trusted source of information. And this is one of the things that we talk about in our Understanding Men courses online. But if we could just start with that. So information, right? A fact is information from a trusted source. And then he puts together those facts plus his values. So what do I mean by his values? I mean his definition of greatness. I mean what he thinks makes a good person, what's important to him, what is the basis of his major decisions in life, and how he spends his time and his energy and his money. So another way of saying values is, to a man, his values are himself. His values define who he is. You're starting to get why it's so important, right? Mm-hmm. So we act on our feelings because our feelings are a reflection of who we are. They act on their opinions because trusted information, right, a fact plus values equals an opinion. So what's going to happen over this series is, first, there's going to be several men, right? There's going to be 3 men. And they may or may not agree with each other. And you'll get to see how most men are about their opinions is they don't need them to be agreed with, but they need them to be respected. So you may have a chance to see the men respecting each other's opinion and maybe adding something else to think about. But it's rare for a man to just wipe out another guy's opinion. That is a very bad thing to do in the man world. Like just to go, you're wrong, right? Or that's stupid. That would violate male etiquette. So they will show respect for each other's opinions. And they're going to speak to the things that they have strong opinions about. So that's what they want to answer, are the things that they have strong opinions about. Now, here's some good news about this. When a man is telling you his opinions, he's revealing himself. So one of his core instincts is to conceal himself, so like a warrior would, right? So that's a core instinct, is to conceal oneself. As Michelle's interviewing them, her natural, developed, as you've transformed yourself, appreciation for men and admiration for men is, in the way that she shows respect to them, is going to tell them she's not an enemy, she's not an adversary, she's not going to use this information against them. So for those of you who are listening, you might have a little, right? Men are super sensitive to information being used against them, and they won't reveal themselves to someone that they think can hurt them or someone who has used information against them, right? So Michelle has a whole lot to do with how this goes with these men. And you're like, why don't men talk to me that way? It's going to have everything to do with how respectful Michelle is in receiving what they have to say. And as she's respectful, the men will say more and more and more, and they'll open up according to how safe Michelle is. Now, you're really lucky, because given that this is being broadcast by the internet, you don't have to be safe for Michelle to have gold come from the men. You could be all snarky if you wanted to, and you could have your arms crossed and you won't affect the men. In our live workshops, the women had to be trained for almost 2 days before we would let them in front of the panel, because how they were paying attention had a huge impact. So you're really lucky. You're getting to ride on Michelle's coattails, if you will. How she's listening is going to allow them to speak. Now, that will help her get gold from the men. And oh my gosh, they're like gold mines. Okay, they're like gold mines, and we like to think of them as a well. And so the more she can have them go back to the well to keep listening, anything else about that, the deeper and deeper and richer it's going to get. Now, let's suppose she does a marvelous job of that, and I'm sure she will. What determines what you get from what she got from the men? Well, it has to do with how are you listening. So how most people listen when someone else is expressing their opinion or what they think about something is, the question in our head is, well, what do I think about that? Right? So they're answering a question in our head, we're answering it as well. Or we're listening to what they're saying and going, do I agree with that? Do I agree with that? I don't know if I agree with that. I think I disagree with that. So we tend to have in our heads the question, do I agree with that? Is he right? Is he wrong? Do I disagree with that? And that is literally how we're listening, or another way of saying it is what we're listening for. So we're listening for, do we agree? We're listening for if we disagree. Now, Michelle, just as a side note, this is one of the reasons why women hate it when men talk about their opinions. Because if we disagree with them, it's causing a disconnect. I call it the opinion cliff. We're getting pushed off the opinion cliff. And if we're disagreeing with them and they keep talking, it's like a kind of torture. We want them just to shut up already, right? And if we agree with them, then we think, oh, good, we're going to connect. And we'll interrupt them to say, I agree with you. And they'll look at us like, so? And we'll have a disconnect instead of a connect. So disagree or agree, I actually recommend what you practice over the Man Panel Summit. If you take it into your life, it will totally transform what you hear from men, what it's like to do that, and what they start telling you. That's what changed my life the most, was learning how to listen to them. Okay, let me break it down. So remember the 2 parts?
Yeah.
How do they form an opinion? What's one part?
Facts.
Yep.
And values.
Yes, facts and values. And facts come from?
Information.
Information from?
A trusted source.
A trusted source. Yes. So this gives you 2 different things you can listen for. So as a man's expressing his opinion, you can listen for, who does he trust? What are his trusted sources of information? So is he quoting scientific research? Is he quoting world leaders? Is he quoting historical figures? Right? Is he quoting what was, in the Wall Street Journal or in Mother's Jones magazine? Sort of opposite ends, right? So you can listen for who does he trust? What are his trusted sources of information? Can I tell you a little story about this?
Yes, please.
So my husband was talking about something, and it was so hard to listen to him because I disagreed with him. Like big disagreed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I shifted to listening to the second part, to listening to his values. So what matters to him? What's important to him? What does he care about? So those are 3 questions I recommend writing down, because that'll have you listen to what he values. What matters to him? What's important to him? What does he care about? So I was listening to Greg's values, and I confirmed why I married him, even though I was disagreeing with his opinion. His values make my life a dream. I married the man, right? And the man is his values. So at the end of it, though, I felt, as a matter of integrity, I said, I love who you are and what you stand for, and I need you to know I completely disagree with your opinion. Mm-hmm. And he's like, why? And I said, I don't trust the same sources of information that you do. Mm-hmm. His mouth dropped. He said, well, what's not to trust about the Wall Street Journal? I said, well, I think their agenda is right there in the headline. And he started laughing. He goes, well, what sources do you trust? And, Miss Heaven on Earth, right? World that works for everyone. You could tell he was waiting for, what he would think of like an innocent answer, right? A visionary answer. And my answer was, I don't trust anyone. Everybody twists statistics to their own purpose. I don't trust any source of statistics. His eyes got so big. I mean, we'd been married for 20 years at that point, and he just found out something really important about his wife. Yeah. So I offer it to you that as you listen to the sources of information they trust, you're going to learn a lot about who this person is. And you may find out that you're very aligned, or you may find out like, whoa, we really come at this from different places altogether. And if you can just know that that's part of what you're hearing, you'll be better in reality. So a lot of our relationships don't work because we're just not interacting with what is there. We're interacting with what we think should be there, right? Mm-hmm. So when a man is telling you his opinions, he's revealing his trusted sources. That's what is there. Then you're listening for values. What matters to him? What does he care about? What's important to him? Oh my gosh, this is how you see a man's soul. This is how you find out who they really are. And even if you disagree with their conclusion, or you wouldn't have acted the way that they acted, or you wouldn't give that kind of advice, when you see where they're coming from, now you're on the right track to understanding who these human beings are as a gender and who they are individually. And that's when it becomes profound. Now, Michelle, if you had a live audience or I was coaching women and having live conversations, I would tell you to wait for the well. So listen longer, listen longer, listen longer. Because normally what happens is when a man pauses, or if he doesn't answer fast enough, we start talking. But the really juicy stuff is down at the bottom of the well, and he may have to go to the well many times. And as he's going to the well to see if he has anything else to say about that, we actually have to just be quiet. So it's one of the things I would invite you to do, Michelle, is just wait till they say, that's all, or I'm done, or that covers it. Especially in your panel of 3 men, when they indicate that's all I had to say about that. That's something that most women never hear men say because they don't listen long enough. They cut in too fast. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. And in our conversations with men in real life, is it valuable if there is that pause, in addition to adding this, giving them the space and the silence, is it valuable to say, is there anything else about that when we're seeking to have deeper understanding? Or do we just wait and give them the space and the silence and see if something comes forward?
Yeah, it's best just to wait. And we encourage women literally to count to 30.
Wow.
And most answers come in at between 18 and 23 seconds. Now, I have actually had a man answer me 2 days later. So, it will be well rewarded if you can actually wait. Anything else is a question we teach men to ask women. Okay. Because she's emptying her basket and she has all these things to say, and we teach them to go, anything else? Right? But we teach them to, when she stops talking, pause for a beat. You don't want to run over what she's saying. Then in the next beat, say, anything else? Now, to most women, that sounds like, I love you and you're the most fascinating person in the world and I could listen to you for hours, which has our hearts go, ah! Right? We're like, he asked me anything else. Oh my gosh, anything else? Like, he showed interest, which makes us feel safe.
Right.
Now, we also teach men to find out from the women in their lives, what are their favorite questions to be asked? And women have all kinds of different questions that they love to be asked, right? How are your grandchildren? What did you learn lately? Do you have any trips planned, right? We like to be asked about our passions. These days, people are asking me about my tractor. I'm so tan because of how many hours I've spent on my tractor. But I ask men, because we've taught, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many we've taught, how to interact with women more effectively. I've taught all these men about favorite questions, and then I've asked men, so what's your favorite question? You know what the answer is? Mm-mm. No questions.
No questions. Yeah, I believe it. I believe
it. Their favorite question is no questions.
Yeah.
So with my son, for example, when we talk on the phone or when I see him, I say, is there anything you want me to know? And then I put the imaginary duct tape over my mouth and I just listen and listen and listen. And I wait a really long time. And sometimes he'll go, no, I'm good. Or he'll start talking about something that really matters to him. But I just have to wait, and I have to give this big playing field, which may be something that you try with the panel tomorrow, is when all the questions that they wanted to answer have been answered, to give them an open playground. So is there anything that you want us to know that we didn't give you the question to answer? And then just wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
In our courses, we ask the question, if you could say something that every woman in the world heard and took to heart, what would you say?
Beautiful question.
Oh my gosh, stunning, stunning question. It was actually contributed by a woman in Wisconsin in 1995. She asked that question. So, may I say another part?
Yes, please.
So, something I didn't mention when I told you I wanted to say it because I forgot is something that we teach in one of our most advanced courses called Understanding Men, Love, and Commitment. And that is, it has to do with that men are looking for the right person. Okay, in that course we talk about the 12 things that make a woman the right person. Well, it's important that women look for the right person. So our instincts have us get married, for example, at the right time, not necessarily to the right person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the things that may be valuable for everyone listening to the individual interviews you do and watching the panel tomorrow is at least have one quality in mind that would be part of the right person for you. So are they honest? Are they communicative? Are they generous? Are they responsible? Are they have integrity? Whatever, at least just one quality that really matters to you. Now, in this course where women make a list of the qualities that they absolutely have to have in a partner, usually their reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. I'm doomed. I can hardly find any man with one of these qualities, let alone a man with all of these qualities. So I'm teaching you guys something from one of our most advanced courses, and that is that mostly what we're thinking is, is this man generous? Is this man generous? Yes or no? Right? Is this man honest? Is this man in touch with his feelings? Is this man emotionally intelligent? Is this man communicative? Is this man, right? Mm-hmm. So we are looking for a yes-no answer. And that's kind of like living in a world where things are either black or white. You miss a whole heck of a lot of color in between. So if you switch the question a little bit, and you can be thinking this while you're interviewing man after man after man, Michelle, they can be thinking, well, how is this man courageous? How is this man generous? How is this man communicative? How is this man in touch with his feelings? How is this man? So whatever is important to you, be listening for how is this man that way? And all of a sudden, because you know, I'm sure about the reticular activator, right? So it's the part of the brain that goes looking for things.
Yes.
Right? It starts scanning for what you're looking for. And if you're scanning for how is this man generous, your mind will find it if it can be found. And will find it in expressions you're not used to. Not the way you're generous or that your dad was generous. You'll find generosity in a way that it never occurred to you that that was a generosity. Oh my gosh. So if you all apply this to the Summit series, you could get a sense end of these 20-something men that maybe that quality is a lot more available in a lot more ways in mankind in general. It could completely change your sense of who men are.
Wow, I love that idea. I love that idea, and I love the way you phrased that question. How is this man, whatever the quality is, instead of is this man, whatever the quality is. I think that's beautiful to gather evidence and be able to see that in the men, because we do have a very broad range of ages and backgrounds and opinions and methods of expressing themselves represented here in the man panel. It's just fascinating for me to interview them. And I'm sure that for some women here, some will trigger certain things, some will say things in a way that they may or may not resonate with, some they'll really find to be really that they're resonating with. But I love that question. I love that idea, and I love that question. I think it's beautiful.
Well, may I build on that?
Yes, please.
So this question could change your whole life and so many of your relationships, because when we listen yes or no and conclude that someone is not what we need them to be, there's a sense of doom, right? So if we stick with generosity, like, this man is so not generous, and I need something from him that would be really generous, I shouldn't even bother asking. Or if I do ask, I'm already going to be asking, like, you won't do this, right?
Right.
Right? Instead of, if you're listening for how is this man generous, then you can go to him with, I have noticed all these different ways that you're generous. And that's a quality that I admire, and it's one of my favorite things about you. And I'm wondering if you would consider being generous with me in this other way. Now, I spoke to you about this when we were talking about what we want to do today. Men are naturally built to put effort where they can win.
Yeah.
So you've just told him he wins at the generous game, and you have another way he could play it. Right? So, well, this is something I win at. So, all right, tell me what it is instead of what do you want? Right?
Right.
What do you got? How else can I play? So you're actually building on his strength, which is always what men want to do. They want to play into the area of their strengths, which is normal because they have no more less time and energy than anybody else. But in general, men have a profound awareness of how much time and energy they have. So that's one way that this can change your life. Another way it can change your life is just go into the general populace, and it doesn't matter how old or young a man is. If you're just listening for how is this man generous, for example, you'll start to see it in a rainbow of colors. And you'll actually realize you live in a different world than you thought you did. And if I could give everyone one thing to listen for, it would be, how is this man protective? Because men are protective, extremely protective by nature, but how they express being protective often just makes us really angry. Because we don't recognize it as protection. It looks like control, for example, or invalidation or being vetoed, when what they are is protecting us from something they think is a threat. And when you can appreciate that, instead of getting all upset, you can actually have a great conversation with them. I appreciate how protective you are of me. Thank you for that. I actually need you to express it differently. Really? How?
Yeah, I love that question too. And as I've been doing the interviews for the Man Panel, that evidence of their protectiveness, of wanting the best for women, because I have sensed is definitely there, because I have sensed that as they're giving advice, as they're sharing from their wisdom, experience, knowledge, they really truly have a desire to support this vision of women having great relationships with men. It's a deep desire for them to help. And they do feel protective because they don't want women to be hurt or disappointed because of something they don't know or understand about men. Yep.
I wonder if you found, Michelle, we had one man say something that just registered into our bones. And what he said was, you can't tell the difference between a wolf and a sheepdog if all you're looking for is teeth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so when men are expressing things to be careful of with men, it's a sheepdog talking about the small percentage of wolves that are out there that actually cause a lot of harm. They get around. And the sheepdogs are always trying to protect us from the wolves, but unfortunately, we keep giving the wolves a chance. You know, oh no, you're underestimating him, or no, he's changed, or we like to bet on potential.
Yeah.
But sheepdogs can tell who's a wolf, right? They can tell. They sniff him out very quickly. Like, that is not a good man. What that man's up to, you should stay away from him. And then we don't believe them. Mm-hmm. They tried to protect us, but we don't believe them. We think we know better. Women tend to squint to see what we want to see, especially if he's very handsome or has a very handsome bank account. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I imagine during the summit that everyone will hear a lot of ways that the sheepdogs are trying to protect women, and they're often invalidated or second guessed. So that would be a good thing to notice if you're thinking that they've got it wrong or that they're exaggerating. Maybe you're not paying attention to your sheepdog's signals, and that's gonna, if it hasn't already been a mistake, you could look to see, so where did I ignore the ways that men were trying to protect me and then paid the price?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good tip. And I do encourage the women that are on this event to listen from that point of view, because I really do believe that whether or not you resonate with a certain speaker as much or not, all of them are coming from the place of really desiring to want to give you something of value and to want to help and protect you from being hurt so that you can enjoy better relationships with men. So I think that's a beautiful lens. These questions you're providing us, Alison, are providing a beautiful lens for us to experience this event from. So I really thank you for that. And to experience our interactions with men in our day-to-day lives as well. Like you said, these are questions that really could transform someone's life, and like you said, provide this whole rainbow of colors that we're not seeing if we're just in that black and white. Is he generous or is he not generous mode, right?
Right. Do I agree or disagree? Another question that's great is, if you're not resonating with how a man is being or what he's doing at all, is the question, what if there's a good reason for that? And to be curious instead of to project onto him that he's doing that for the same reason I would have done that. Mm-hmm. So, may I give an example?
Yes, please.
Early on, in our workshops, I was talking to our panel of men before they came into the room. And I was just letting them know what it would be like, because we want them to be as confident as they possibly can. And this man was like not looking me in the eye. He was giving really short answers. He was being like rude. I wanted to kick him off the panel, but it was too late. I couldn't think of a way to do it. I didn't have experience in doing that yet. But fortunately, I didn't know how to do it at that time. And then when he was speaking on the panel, there was a question about what makes a woman attractive. And they were talking about the difference between a woman who's attractive in a way that has them care about her and want to give to her and be protective of her and provide for her, like, you know, all the goodies, versus a woman that was their type and that made them kind of crazy because she was so their type. It activated their most kind of primitive, take that. And as he was describing his type, he was describing what I looked like at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yes, he was describing a woman just like me, my coloring, my shape, everything. And suddenly I realized why he was so strange at the table with the other men. He was just trying to protect himself from his own reaction to the way that I looked. From the moment I walked up to the table, it was a problem. He was not himself. And he was trying to stop being not himself. But thank goodness I was curious. You know, I let him in, and then I was curious to see what happens. And then, oh, that was the good reason for that. Mm-hmm. Instead of this guy's just a jerk. So that's another really useful question, especially when what someone's saying seems really like, huh? What? Why did Michelle let them in the summit? You know? Well, everyone that's part of the summit is someone that you've chosen because you know how much they want to provide for women who are committed to these great relationships. And I mean, it's the one last thing that men always say is they just think it's awesome that women are working hard to have better relationships with men. They're so moved by how much we're trying.
Yeah, I agree. So do we have time, Alison, to talk really briefly about some of the journey of men, or do we have time for that today?
Well, let's do a really short one, okay? So as you're listening to the different men, besides their trusted information, right? So their information from trusted sources, otherwise known as a fact, and their values, and a whole bunch of things about them individually, they're also going to be answering the questions from their stage of development. And they're probably not aware of it. So one of the things to listen to is, do you have men, Michelle, anybody under 30?
We do have a couple in their 30s.
Beautiful. Under 30, they're likely to be what we call a knight. And life is about developing skills and testing those skills and challenging themselves to find out where they're good enough and not yet good enough, so that they keep developing their ability literally to survive. They do that instinctively. So they look for challenge and adventure, right? They look for fun, which is what challenge is to them. It's fun. So the men in their 30s are probably princes. And princes are focused on what we call building. So they're in different phases when they're a prince. You probably don't have any men who are looking for where to build. They're probably in the middle of building it or have had a lot of success in their building. So it's always about, am I getting somewhere? Like, where am I getting? What am I accomplishing? Is it coming together? And it affects everything that they do. Then, towards the end of that building, which is at least 12 years, usually they spend in that stage of being a prince. And that's 12 years after they figure out what they want to build, which might take years and years to do. Then they end up in what we call the tunnel. And you'll be lucky if you have any man in the tunnel. They're not likely to say yes to something like this, but you might luck out, because men in the tunnel are questioning everything. I built all this, I became all this, does it really matter? So they're in an existential darkness where they're literally plagued with self-doubt and questions. And my book, Keys to the Kingdom, is about a couple that's going through that, where he's in the tunnel. When he comes out of the tunnel, it's literally a process of clarity where he's become extremely clear about who he is. And these are men who are likely to show up in an environment like yours in order to provide. Mm-hmm. So their values are rock solid. Mm-hmm. And you'll see one of the things that distinguishes a king is you have a sense of that any place he is, there's a space he's occupying that he owns. This is who I am. This is mine. And when you're in their area, right, that they are king of, they're going to speak with a kind of authority that can blow your hair back. Mm-hmm. Like, wow. I mean, they don't equivocate. And that's part of being a king. And the focus of being a king is literally to provide. Mm-hmm. So we have this test and adventure, we have building, and then we have provide. And they will provide for whomever they consider to be their own. Like, you're mine to take care of. And so many of the men that you will interview in the summit will be men who their definition of who's mine to take care of is much bigger than like their family or their business. It includes women they've never met. Yeah. You're mine to take care of, and I'm here to take care of you. And that can be a little off-putting, especially to older women, successful women, like, well, I never said I needed to be taken care of, and I never asked you to take care of me. No, you didn't. You didn't. But would you be willing? Would you be willing to receive this man's gifts?
Well, there's another beautiful question and another lens we can see this from, because I really do believe the men on this event are offering the women here their gifts. So I love that question. And I want to be respectful of your time. I know that you've been generous to give us a little extra time, Alison. And I also want to give you a chance to let everyone know about the exciting things you have going on your site, understandmen.com. And do you want to just say a minute or two about that before we wrap up?
Oh, thank you so much. So after 22 years of providing our courses to understand men and women in live workshops, 5 of them are now available on the internet. So they're the most up-to-date versions of our information, our teaching processes, which are always updating. You get access to them from anywhere from 90 days to, in our graduate courses, you can have 365 days to play with all 4 of them and cross-reference them and go back again and again and again. So the graduates who are going through our online courses now are actually more solid in the information and the understanding and transforming their marriages and the way that they date and the relationships that they're in and their families and their sons at a rate that is beyond my wildest dreams. I am so excited about it. And I get to interact with the people who are in the online courses. We keep extending opportunities for them to get on the phone with me and ask questions. And so it's still very personal.
That's wonderful. And I want to encourage all of you to go to Alison's site. Believe me when I tell you, we have just touched a tiny, tiny, tiny little tip of the iceberg of what Alison has to share. And I know you can sense just from her generous sharing today that there's so much more. And I invite you to go deeper with Alison and her work. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
You're welcome. Truly my privilege. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you so much, Alison. Take good care. Bye-bye for now.